Thank you.
Okay, and the next question will go to Ms. Wilson-Raybould. Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Oh, thank you, Speaker. While recognizing federal jurisdiction for the borders, many of my constituents, like most British Columbians, are extremely concerned about the possible spread of COVID-19 from the United States. In lifting the restrictions, other parts of the country seem to be doing them more quickly. This is also of a concern. With health and safety being paramount importance, can the government please confirm that it has no intentions of opening up the border to the United States for non-essential travel anytime soon, and it will respect the wishes of the British Columbia government, which has been very emphatic on this point?
The Honourable Minister.
I'd like to thank through you, Mr. Speaker, the member opposite for that very important question. Let me start by saying that when it comes to the Canada-US border, decisions about our border will be taken by Canadians in the interests of Canadians. Our government is taking a cautious and prudent approach. Canadians have made huge sacrifices in fighting coronavirus. We respect those sacrifices. We will not squander the gains we have made. We are very aware of the particular concerns of British Columbia. And in fact, just yesterday, I spoke with the Premier of BC about this issue.
Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Well, thank you. Last week at this committee, I reflected that thankfully there were no major outbreaks of COVID in Indigenous communities in Canada. This, however, no longer appears to be the case with La Loche and Clearwater Dene. There are growing concerns among Indigenous communities that there will be more outbreaks, particularly as restrictions are being lifted. Support Indigenous steps to protect their COVID-19 and affirm their inherent right to do so. One of the consequences of the pandemic is to highlight the conditions in Indigenous communities: overcrowding, lack of infrastructure, food insecurity, lack of appropriate governance that makes Indigenous populations more vulnerable. Can the government please explain why we do still not have a recognition of rights framework to support true reconciliation, self-determination, and nation rebuilding that would have helped Indigenous peoples to be less vulnerable during this pandemic? And when is it coming?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. And before I answer it, I want to wish, on behalf of the entire House of Commons, a happy Indigenous Nurses Day to all the Indigenous nurses that are doing tremendous work all across our country. Our government has I'm very proud of the work we've done on Indigenous issues. We've spent over $23 billion of new money since being elected in housing, in healthcare, in education, and we've removed, I believe it's close to 80 to 85 boil water advisories. This pandemic has, of course, slowed down the entire work plan, but the plan was to have all boil water advisories removed by March of 2021, as well as through the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations is working diligently on an agreement with the Wet'suwet'en Nation. But I believe that a recognition of rights is
we'll
so
now
very
go back
important
to
to our country.
Mrs. Wilson-Raybould. Ms. Raybould. Wilson-Raybould.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate the answer in damages concerns and situations in Indigenous communities will continue. So, Chair, over the last few weeks, our office has heard from many organizations and businesses that do not meet the criteria for either the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy and or the Canada Emergency Business Account because they do not have a business account with a financial institution, or in some cases, their payroll is handled by umbrella organizations. These businesses and organizations need to be included. Does the government plan on expediting or expanding the eligibility of these programs?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for that question. And I want to assure her that that we are continuing to work very hard to make sure that businesses, small businesses, are able to access the range of programs that we have to help them through this difficult period, whether it is through the regional development agencies or the over 600 or almost 600,000 businesses that are getting support. The work continues, and we'll need to keep working together to make sure our businesses are supported. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The next question goes to Mr. Diot. Mr. Diot.